however, CoNGO went to Asia. We met in Thailand early this year, and we organized the Asia Regional Committee of CoNGO, and NGOs within the Asia Pacific, including Western Asia, all the way from Lebanon and Egypt to South Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, etc., and North Asia, came to Thailand and reaffirm the necessity of non-governmental organizations to coalesce, to coordinate, to harmonize some of their actions and address some of the pressing issues, be it in their own political platforms or in platforms provided by multilateral institutions and organizations like the United Nations.
Well, two problems. The first is that all of us know that there are many non-governmental organizations which are not independent, which are front organizations for government. And we have a term for that, which is GONGO, government organized non-governmental organizations. And we know them. And we find that there is no process at the moment to get rid of them, because the independence of civil society is critically important. And that independence can only be guaranteed if there are no front organizations and if there is independent source of funding. I still do not know from your answer what percentage of NGOs, not just CoNGO, but what percentage of NGOs funding is coming from governments and what percentage is coming, because I have seen no figures, no NGO is releasing its figures openly and transparently. This is one of the heavily guarded secrets. Where is the money coming from? I'd like to see this transparently presented so that I can judge the independence of NGOs. That's problem one. And problem two, you yourself have identified. Whenever I have chaired meetings of NGOs and looked at the audience in front of me, I find they're very white in color. They're all white, 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 white. The population of the world is not white. The majority of the population of the world is black and brown. And I don't see blacks and browns in front of me in NGO meetings. And so how do I know that you are really representative of the world? Because I find your membership too white. And just organizing a meeting in Thailand does not prove the point. Perhaps you went there only to get a massage and not for really changing the color of CoNGO. So 2 points.
I like to pick up on the word massage. I think I'm
you
taking,
like that.
I like it. I'm taking it metaphorically, though, that gongos massage the issues. Gongos possibly skirt the issues, and therefore they curry favor with their host governments and the very institutions that fill their coffers, that funds their activities. I do have a very specific perspective on gongos, that there is a multiplicity of practices among non-governmental organizations, and while there have been calls for NGOs to police their own ranks, I definitely do not want to use the word police as both a practice and a metaphor for how NGOs should govern themselves and define their role in the public. But certainly there are institutions, for example, like the Global Policy Forum, which is across the street here from UN headquarters, their office I mean, that they have been suggesting an NGO index, an index that monitors how NGOs are delivering their own promises, are a way to measure their effectivity in the very things they say in their charters and in their rules and in their objectives and aims, but also an index by which we are able to measure the United Nations' own commitment to including non-governmental organizations as a necessary pillar in international decision making. There is no use to naming non-governmental organizations as the conscience of the nation and of the world when they are relegated to simply that, conscience. There is both sense and conscience. It doesn't make sense to simply call non-governmental organizations the conscience when they do not find themselves, when they are not invited, when they are not intentionally made part of international decision making. And I think the whole issue of all too white representation is a correct assessment in Ambassador Kamal's description just now. And that's why the regionalization of CoNGO, but also making the venues for coalescing, for networking outside of the traditional city centers and capitals, and going to the very places where human-made calamities are happening and assess the situation firsthand. And NGOs, that's precisely where NGOs can check their own sincerity to the very objectives that they mentioned. Now, GONGOs, in a nutshell, for my perspective, I adhere to the policy of diplomatic influence, which is GONGOs, I invite them to CoNGO meetings, and I don't necessarily exclude them, precisely because if they come to a meeting on human rights, might it be that in the course of a 3 or 4 day or 5 day encounter with other human rights activists, they might change their perspective. CoNGO does not have the wherewithal to be changing structures of NGOs, but they do have the influence of voice and perspective that over time, perhaps, other peoples of the world might learn from, and when they go back to their own countries, they might say, look, my dear government officials, there is a different perspective out there that can prosper a different kind of human rights, one that the world already practices, and might it be that we change this?
Over to Lehigh for 2 questions from their end.
Good morning, Mr. Ambassador and Mr. Bautista. My name is Andrew Lustig. I'm a senior at Lehigh University, and it's my pleasure to ask you this question. There are thousands of NGOs in the world, but only about 1,500 have UN accreditation. What benefit does this UN accreditation give them? What can an NGO do with access to the UN and its resources that it couldn't otherwise? If possible, can you give us some examples of ways in which NGOs have advanced their causes through the UN and its resources? Thank you.
Let me take that question, but let's have a second question also.
Good morning. My question was more towards Mr. Bautista. If you said you would like governments to consult with NGOs, do you think your interests would best be served by working through official channels, through the UN particularly? Or do you think, showing yourself in the field, making yourself indispensable to them to attract them to you, which do you think would be the better alternative? Thank you.
Let me take the first question and ask Mr. Bautista to take the second question. The first question is, what is the use of accreditation and how can you benefit from it? And you're absolutely right, there are thousands of NGOs. There's a country called Nepal. It's lost somewhere in the mountains, somewhere, high Himalaya mountains. There are 60,000 registered NGOs in Nepal. 60,000 up in the lost mountains of the Himalayas. So there are hundreds and thousands of NGOs around the world. And your question is totally legitimate, that if there are hundreds and thousands of NGOs, why are only 1,500 accredited? There are 2 reasons. Firstly, very few of them have even attempted to get accreditation. And most of them, I have been personally responsible to bring in half a dozen or a dozen institutions as NGOs, and it has been a push to get them to understand that there are benefits attached to this. They did not know. Among the benefits, number one, you are sitting around a table. You are part of CoNGO, you are part of the DPI NGO system, you are part of the ecosystem.